Hi, I'm Eileen Roche, editor of Designs and Machine Embroidery magazine, and I'm here today to show you how to make a personalized journal in the hoop. You're not going to believe how easy this is. You can monogram it, you can use a theme, you name it, you can do it. So let's go ahead over to the machine, and I have tearaway stabilizer hooped in a jumbo hoop. And I'm going to access the embroidery section of the machine, and over on the USB stick I have my design stored in a folder, and I'll bring that up and touch set, and I'm going to place my vinyl faux leather right in the hoop, and it's going to stitch color 1, which is an outline of this design. It's a placement guide, and it's also going to include a ribbon placement guide because we'll be adding a detailed ribbon, and we'll also be adding a applique. So as it stitches, I just want to give you some tips for embroidering on vinyl. Make sure when you're going to use vinyl, you are permanently decided this is the material that you're going to use, because it will, some of the stitches and needle penetrations are not removable. So you have to really commit to this one design. Use a thread that contrasts so that you can see exactly where you're going. Because when you do black on black, it's very hard to determine exactly where your applique will be placed. So use contrasting thread to your advantage. It can really help you in placing your materials. Yeah, you'll notice I didn't actually place my vinyl down here perfectly. It's stitching off the edge a little bit, but that's okay because this placement guide is actually much larger than my finished applique. So it's just off about a 1/16 of an inch, and that's fine. So it is just about done, the ribbon placement. Now it's going to come up and show me where the applique square will be placed. And once that's down, I'll then apply my ribbon. Now, I like to use just a little glue stick on the back of my ribbon because that will keep it in place during the embroidery. And I have already folded down and pressed the ends of my ribbon so that I have a nice finished edge. And now that the machine is stopped, I'm just going to take that ribbon and place it inside that outline, and I'll just carefully pay attention that I'm in the right place. And I smooth it down. Remember, we have that glue on there, so that's really handy. It helps in that final step. And you don't want to have any fingers in the hoop, but there we go. The ribbon is just going to be tacked down with this pretty bean stitch. Now a bean stitch is a triple stitch, so the needle penetrates in point A, goes on to B, back to A, back to B, and then advances to C. And when it does that, you get a really nice finished look. And it's a strong stitch. Now my ribbon I was talking to you and I wasn't paying attention, so my ribbon got a little waylaid here, but I have a better sample that I can show you the actual finished process. So let's go over to the machine, over to the table where I have one already completed, almost. But what I want to do now is add the monogram. So even though this is off the machine, wait do you see how easy it is to get it right back where we want it to be. So we'll trim this thread. And I raise the presser foot, of course, whenever you're going to do that. And then we'll just attach the hoop to the machine. And now we're going to edit a little bit, kind of midstream. So let's go to return. And now we'll touch scan. And so quickly, this machine will just scan what is in the hoop. And this is going to make sure that my new design is aligned with the one that's in the hoop. Okay, so now on the screen, I can see that it is exactly there. I'll use my edit key and my move keys to bring the new design perfectly aligned with the existing design. A little hard to see exactly where it all goes, but we'll use the guidelines at the top of the hoop. I think that's easier to see. There's less detail there. And these jog keys are just wonderful. Now I could zoom in, use that key. These arrows let me pan so that I can make sure that everything is aligned perfectly. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the blue stitching on the screen, which is the image on the screen, is aligned with the image of the white stitching, which is actually what is in the hoop. So I'm pleased with that position. I'll touch OK. And now I'm going to add a monogram. So I'll go into the machine and select the letter H and touch Set. And now that letter H appears in the center of my design. So I'm going to move it down and rotate it 90 degrees. And I want to center that in my applique box. And touch OK. And now embroidery. Now we've already done some of these elements, so we'll use the advance key to advance through color 1, which we've already done. Color 2 was the tack down of the ribbon. Color 3 is the applique of the ribbon, of the applique itself. And the next color would be the satin, but I haven't trimmed yet, so we'll go ahead, but let's go ahead and do that right now. We'll go ahead and trim right in the hoop. It's so easy to do. You just slide your scissors right along the edge of the stitching. I do like to keep one end of the applique up in my hand. There we go. And then the satin stitching will just cover that. Okay. So now we'll lower the presser foot, and we're just going to stitch that outline in white thread, and it'll cover that raw edge. And then we'll add our other elements of our bag, well, not our bag, our travel journal, and then we'll be ready to add the monogram. So this is a pretty stitch that goes outside of that satin. And once it does this outline, I think we'll go ahead just to save some time, and we'll skip right to the actual making of the bag after we do the monogram. So I'm just going to tie off right here, and we'll use that advance key again to stitch the monogram. And you remember that's at the end of the design. It was the last thing that we brought in, and so that's where it's loaded within the design itself. So while that's stitching, let's go back over to the table and I'll show you some other elements of the bag. So while this is hooped, you have some placement guides. See these outer dimensions? So we'll use those to place our lining fabric on the back of the hoop. And I actually have a couple pieces of painter's tape prepared that I'll just use to hold down that lining. And we go back to the machine, it's going to stitch and tack this down right along that edge. Then it will stop, and we'll do the same thing for the flaps. And we'll place them according to those placement guides that are stitched, and we'll tape them in place. And then our last color stitches it all together. When you take it out of the hoop, here is the flaps and your lining. So you can see that your lining fills the back of the bag, and yet your flaps are covered right here. So let me show you my sample that's already been stitched, and that's right here in the hoop. So here's my finished top, and here's my finished back. So I'll just pop this out of the hoop and set that aside. And then I can carefully, this is tearaway, and it's 2 layers. And I'm just going to trim that, tear it away. But with a rotary cutter and a ruler, you would place the, let's say, 1/8 line on the outside stitched line. And then we'll just trim that excess fabric away. And once that's released, you'll go all the way around. You'll have to use scissors on the curved ends, but once you do that, then it's time to put the snap in, and I'll show you how easy that is to do. If you've never done snaps, there's no reason to be afraid of them. They're very easy to maneuver. So I'll just take my scissors and trim this away. And I'm just going to go right outside that edge. And when I get this one edge off, I'll show you how to insert this snap. Now, when you're inserting snaps, you want to remember that there's a finished side, and that is what will be on the exterior of the journal. So I'm going to take the stud and pierce that vinyl right through. Now, if you can't get it through, you can use an awl. You could start it with a pin or some other device, but once you get it through, you then put that stud through, and its matching mate, which is the socket, goes on this side, on the inside, and then you just put it through a clamp, like a pliers, and when you pierce it, it's all set. And I won't do that right here, but I can show you. Here's my little sample. You should always, test it on a sample first to make sure that it's going to work, and open and close a couple times. And there you have your travel journal.